Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Austin College's People in Our Neighborhood After School Edition. It's a video series in which members of the Austin College community, faculty, staff, students, and alumni teach you how to do something that you may or may not already know how to do. Hopefully you don't know how to do it, I guess. Today we have with us the director of the Scarborough Center for Writing at Austin College and also a professor of writing, Lisha Storey. Lisha, you want to say hi?
Hey, hello, everyone.
And she's coming to us live from the Scarborough Center for Writing, which is very exciting. And Lisha is going to talk to us today about journaling, which obviously is near and dear to her heart when it comes to writing, but is also something that I think a lot of us, maybe a lot of us have tried. I know I am a repeat failure at journaling. I've failed at journaling multiple times in my life, but I'm really excited to get some insight into some of the benefits of journaling and maybe some tips and tricks for how to make journaling an exciting and meaningful adventure. So, Lisha, if you want to just start us off a little bit and tell us about your experiences with journaling and or writing more broadly, but if you want to kind of give us a little bit of an intro, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks so much, Erin. Hello, everyone. I can't directly see you, but I trust that you're out there. And I saw some folks coming in at the beginning of the meeting. But yeah, my name is Lisha Storey. I am here in the Writing Center. I'm also wearing my Writing Center t-shirt. So I'm like all things Writing Center. And in normal times, this is actually a really great place to write if you're so inclined. But yeah, today I want to talk a little bit about journaling. My guess is that this is something that's pretty familiar for most folks, kind of similar to what you were just saying, Erin. Like it's something that people have done from time to time. They've tried versions of it. And so I want to give some just a little bit of an overview, kind of how I approach journaling. And then just talk about a little bit about some resources that you can use, different types of journaling that you can try out, as well as that key point of like ways that you can build a sustainable journaling practice. And so it's not about failure, it's about experimentation and finding out what works for you. So no judgment here. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we'll be doing today, including because this is a session about writing, we will be doing some writing. So we will do some actual journaling in our journaling session. I know, mind's blown. All the way. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's really exciting. Well, I'm curious to hear from folks who are joining us in the gallery here. How many of you, and you can unmute yourself and share verbally, or you can raise your little digital Zoom hand or your physical hand if your video's on. But how many of you, like me, are folks who have tried journaling in the past and have yet to find a journaling practice that really works for you? You can, as I say, I mean, the two videos I see two videos, multiple hands and thumbs, lots of thumbs up. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, it seems like a lot of people are kind of in the same boat as I am. Does anyone want to unmute and share a little bit about your experience of ways that you've tried to journal and sort of why that has not worked out for you? It's that very exciting moment where we wait for a brave soul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Barbara, go ahead.
Hey, I unmuted myself correctly? Just
you
make
have.
sure. Okay. So I've actually joined in. Alicia has done a couple of other kind of work. I'm putting quotes around this word, workshops. I don't have a camera on this computer, by the way. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And so I found the workshops have been very helpful, but my issue is overcoming my own inertia and just keeping at it. Looking for the magic bullet or the magic pill or something. No, I mean, quote pill that makes it something that I will definitely stick to. So this is not about, what Lisha has talked about before, or, in her workshops not being useful for me. It absolutely is. I think it's just trying to overcome that sort of, okay, other things have, maybe pop up into my, what's the word, my priorities or something like that. And then I just don't make it a priority for myself. I think that's mainly the issue for me, but yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
helpful or not. So.
That makes sense. And Mary gave you a thumbs up at one point. So I think Mary's with you on that. Mary, has your experience with journaling been similar?
Yeah, definitely.
Just kind of overcoming like, this, if something has to go, this is the thing that can go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my problem historically has been, I like the idea of journaling and I don't know what to write. So, Lisha, do you have any recommendations for us about sort of how to get started or ways to kind of approach, the tyranny of the blank page?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, actually, if I could start with a little bit of intro, I'm going to step back just for a second and kind of talk a little bit about how I approach journaling. And every time I tell people that I teach writing, I get like writing confessions. So it's like, oh no, don't correct my grammar. Or like, I was a terrible writer in high school or college. And so I definitely come to this conversation and this time together as a writing teacher. And that's like one of the hats that I wear. But to remind myself and to share with you that I also approach this as a writer and as a journaler, I wanted to share some artifacts with you. So I dug out, I'm also a hoarder. So I dug out some of my very old journals from, this one's from 1990 something, when I was much younger, and I'm not going to say, there's an ocelot on the front here. And this was actually like a really great invitation for me to kind of step back and think about, what my own journaling practice has been. I used to be a very regular journaler. And then flipping through the pages, they're a little too cringeworthy to read in detail right now, but I saw that I journaled fairly regularly at this time. And so it was maybe, a few days had passed in between entries. I didn't remember that I did a Dear Journal, like I addressed my journal entries to a Dear Journal. You don't necessarily have to do that, but maybe that's what starts you off, right? Is like addressing it to someone. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I have a few of them here, and these journals have like served different purposes at different times. So these are like my feelings journals. And then these are more kind of like poetry and like creative writing and stuff like that. So the journal just sort of, it suited the need that I had for it. Does that make sense? So I think what interests me in talking about journaling and really just talking about personal writing is that we are inundated with text, and we use writing in our everyday lives to do so many things, right? Especially, for those of you who are students and teachers and faculty, we're writing emails to our professors as well as writing papers for those, so we're using writing all the time. Like writing works for us a lot, but we don't often, or at least for me, I don't make as much time to like make writing work for me or to utilize it for my own personal reflection or for self-care. And so unlike the fairly regular journaler of my adolescence, a lot of feelings in here, just a lot. For now, it feels like, at least for me recently, journaling has been something that I've turned to when I almost have like a surplus of emotion, or I'm stuck somewhere and I turn to it. So even now, I wouldn't say that I have a regular sustained journaling practice. And it's sort of this has been my challenge, just to think about like, how do I build that back in as well? Mm-hmm. But I think that writing, because writing is so much a part of what we do, I think it's just important just to think about like, how can we use writing for our own purposes? How can we write for ourselves, write for an audience of the self, rather than having to worry about, public forms of writing. And maybe that writing that we do for ourselves leads to public forms of writing, and that's cool too. But I just think that we underestimate how meaningful it can be just to make that time and that space to write about what we're feeling and experiencing and those kinds of things. So I wanted to say that. And then just putting my teacher hat on just for a second, the other thing that really intrigues me about writing in general, and I think this goes for writing journaling as well, is that writing is a way that we make knowledge. Like we produce knowledge with writing, right? And you've probably had the experience, those of you who are here, like maybe you were writing an essay or writing in your journal or something like that. And in the process of writing, you go, aha, or like light bulb moment happens, you come to a realization through writing that you weren't able to have before. And so we do that, with the academic papers that we write all the time, but that same like making of meaning, and that same like making of self-knowledge is really important and meaningful too. So I think maybe part of the way of like getting started again is really approaching it not as approaching journaling not as like superfluous or not as even like sentimental or something like that, but to really think of it as retrospective, as reflective, and as like important, like meaning making work that we can have for ourselves too, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. Yeah. And, I've often said to my students in the year since Lisha has joined us that there are a lot of ways she's made me a better academic writer, since writing is part of my job, and a better teacher of writing in my own classes. And one of the things I always tell students is, what Lisha says? Lisha says that we learn what we know through writing it, that writing it is a process of figuring out what we're trying to say. You don't have to have it all figured out before you can start writing. But I never thought about applying that to self-knowledge. And, maybe if you're working through something internally, writing about it can help you produce that understanding, that deeper understanding as well, beyond sort of the epiphany that you might have about a research project. So that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And writing does have some, therapeutic uses as well. It's something I'm not as familiar with. I'm not a psychologist, but there's psychologist James Pennebaker who has used writing and studied the effects of writing for folks who are working through trauma and those kinds of things. Writing has really powerful. And I think, it very much has to do with entering into this space where you can write not for another person, you write for yourself. And then you're engaging directly with your experiences, your emotions, your thoughts, those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Now, is there anybody here? Now, most of you, it seemed like, raised your hand and said that you, like me, are a sometimes failed. We need a better word, but sometimes failed journaler, an intermittent
journal. Mm-hmm.
That you're an intermittent journaler. But is there anyone here who is an experienced journaler, or even if you're maybe you're not in the period of journaling right now, or you pick it up and put it back down, but at some point in your life you were an active journaler? Any active journalers in the room want to tell us about your own journaling practices? We got a lot of writers today.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They're too busy writing about their journaling practice to tell.
That's fine.
Verbally.
That's great.
Right. So do you want to get us started, Lisha, on some tips?
Yeah. Tips and tricks. So actually what I think might be useful at this point is to do a little bit of writing. Actually, we're going to start with that. So what I'd like you to do, and this is partially a little bit of a challenge to you, to get out whatever writing utensils you've brought with you. So if you have, like me, a notebook or just a piece of paper, pen or pencil, if you have another tab open and you're writing in a Google Doc, go for that. So go ahead and get that handy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes, or actually I'm going to play a song. And I'm guessing for those of you who see this later on YouTube, you might not get this song for copyright issues, but I'm going to play about a 3-minute song. And I want you to just put your pen to paper and write for 3 minutes. So do not stop writing. Don't worry about spelling or punctuation, but just write about whatever comes to mind. If you don't know what to write, you write, I don't know what to write. And you just write whatever is kind of coming through there. And we call this free writing. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this writing. I'm going to get my screen share going on and play a song for you. So when you hear the music, start writing, and then I'll bring us back in just a few moments. And you'll see me do it too once I figure myself out. So please start without me. All right.
If you're joining us after the fact on YouTube, we're just going to pause the video here. So you set yourself a timer for 3 minutes, put on your favorite 3-minute song, and then hit play again on the video and rejoin us.
All righty. right. That was 3 minutes. So I'm curious what that was like for folks. I actually had a hard time. I know I'm kind of multitasking here a little bit, but I had a hard time kind of keeping going. And so I repeated a couple of sentences just to keep the pen on the page. Did that happen for other folks too?
Other folks find them, yes. Barbara's giving a thumbs up. Valerie nodded. Yeah. Well, it's hard, but also nice to just sort of do stream of consciousness and not really think too hard about what you're doing. I feel like there aren't many things in my life I don't think over hard about. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah. So, so this was an example. So I called it free writing, but it's one of the things that you can do as part of kind of, I think, especially getting back into a journaling practice. So you set a timer. Maybe you make a playlist and you write to, your own set of music or something like that, but you set a timer and you just write. And what this really challenges, at least me to do, and I'm sure it challenges you as well, is to write without that editor, right? So you have to kind of work at not letting someone tell you like what you're writing is stupid or what you're writing is really dull or what you're writing is really trite. You just are spending time on sort of like flexing the actual muscle of writing. And one of the resources that I'll recommend is a book called Writing Down the Bones, Freeing the Writer Within by Natalie Goldberg. It's a really well-known book that has some really great practical advice about kind of how to build a writing practice. And in one of the chapters, Natalie talks about, she compares building a writing practice to something like running, right? You can't just wait until the inspiration strikes. You can't just wait and just say like, I'm going to wait until I really feel like going running. Like, you're probably not going to feel like going running. You're just not going to want to.
40 years to feel like going running.
Yes. Yes. And I've been trying to get back into running recently after an injury. And it's like, you don't want to do it. Right. But at least for me, in terms of running, and similarly for journaling too, or writing, when I finish running, I'm really glad that I did it. I never want to start it, but I never regret doing it. And so really one of the tricks is to build that practice, is to like sort of make yourself do it, to build the habit. So you build the habit of running, or you build the habit of writing, even when you don't want to. And then you build up that muscle till you get to the point, a few days in, a few weeks in, or whatever it is, to where you don't want to stop, right? Or you look forward to it. And so then you kind of build it in like a habit, like you would with other things. So one thing that I would recommend is, we'll talk a little bit about just like different prompts and ways that you can get into it. But free writing, I think, is a really good option because there's no expectations, right? You really don't need anything. And then that's also kind of flexing that, like challenging to flex that muscle of like, I'm just going to sit down and write, and I'm not going to worry about what it's about or what it sounds like or what it looks like. I'm just going to do it. And so that can be a really good kind of initial goal to set for yourself. Like, I'm going to try to write 3 times this week for 5 minutes. And you set your timer and you put it in your calendar maybe, and you're saying, I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes, and I'm going to make myself write for that whole 5 minutes. And you kind of then, add on more time, or you add on another day, and you kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think that's great. Folks on the call, what was that experience like for you just now of that 3 minutes? Did you, I saw a couple people nodding about Lisha's, I had to kind of keep writing the same thing over and over again until I got into the flow of it. Tell us a couple of sentences about your experience with that 3 minute free writing assignment. I don't know. Assignment seems like
prompt, or yeah.
Exercise.
Yeah, I thought it was super calming. Definitely a little bit redundant in the beginning, but as we got into it, I started, expanding a little bit more. But yeah, I thought it was really calming, and I really like the music. So thank you for that, Dr. Storey.
Oh yeah, thanks, Valerie.
Yeah, that was great. Other folks, what was your experience like?
I ended up almost getting stuck at one point, but I was thinking about how I like the music, so then I ended up writing about that.
Well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I when the music, I could tell, right, that the music was wrapping up, I was like, Was that 3 minutes already?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was very, I think 3 minutes seems like a lot of time when you're starting. And then once you're kind of in the zone, you know, it's like, oh, it goes by quickly.
Yeah. And if you think about how much time we spend in a day doing any other thing, you know, scrolling Instagram or whatever, you know, 3 minutes is not very much time at all. And so, yeah, I think how we feel at the outset of something feels very different than when we complete that thing, you know? So I try to remember that when I don't want to go running or when I don't want to write, I try to make myself remember like, oh yeah, I'm not going to regret this.
Yeah. I won't be sorry that I did this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, what's next, Dr. Storey?
Well, I started you off with some free writing. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some other prompts that you can use to get yourself going, because just the timed writing might, you know, it might only last so long. So maybe that's a good intro into building a writing practice. But I wanted to talk about just like other kinds of journaling too. And I appreciated what some of the folks, you know, Valerie and Mary were talking about, like, it was calming, right? But then I also, you know, when I ran out of something to say or write, I paid attention to the music or just kind of whatever was going on around me. And so that kind of like, I'm going to kind of call that mindfulness, right? This sort of awareness of what's happening in the present in sort of a non-judgmental way, right? Can be a really helpful application, I guess, of journaling. And it can also be a helpful prompt potentially too. So you just sort of write about what's happening, right? Like, what do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you feel? What are you thinking? You can think about like just what's going on in this present moment and use that as your prompt. Again, it's real low tech. Like, there's not a lot of stuff that you need for this. So I'll ramp this up, I guess, into, you know, more resource intensive types of journaling. But yeah, free writing, you know, just mindfulness, paying attention to what's happening around you and, you know, entertaining any thoughts, you know, or feelings that brings about as well. Some folks do a lot of gratitude journaling. And so that can be a really helpful prompt. I think sometimes, especially maybe if you had a bad week or a bad day, or it's a nice practice to engage in. So you sit down and write about, you know, what you're grateful for that day, for that week. And it can just help you kind of recognize, you know, it's easy when things go wrong, like those things really rise to the surface and we kind of remember those. And sometimes the wins or the victories or the small things that people do for us even are harder to remember. So that can be a good kind of practice as well. Yeah.
I have to say, now that you say that, he's going to love that I'm sharing this, but hold on. But the most successful long-term journaling experience that I've had is that when my husband, Andrew, who's one of our campus librarians, and I were first together, I don't even know when we started doing it. But for several years, we had little journals. I'd go get one, but these little journals, and each night we would write, like I would write something that I was grateful to him for, like something I was grateful about related to him. And then he would write something that he was grateful about related to me. And that would be sort of like how we would wrap up our day together. And sometimes, you know, we wouldn't actually see it until the morning or whatever, but I have all of those now. We stopped doing it, I think probably when we had children. But it's nice to have, and probably something that we should start doing again. But yeah, because it doesn't take a whole lot of energy, but it does put you in the mindset of being grateful and sort of get you out of a rut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the gratitude journaling, yeah, that's so great that you have that example kind of right to hand. Maybe it's something, you know, Corbett's in school now, and, you know, you can do that with your kids too. So
yeah, Corbett, our 7-year-old, and I happen to be sitting where he usually does his virtual school, but he's been doing a lot of writing this year. This is his How to Make a Cinnamon Toast book. Yes. But yeah, maybe starting a journaling practice with him would be kind of fun as well.
Mm-hmm. I like that example that you just shared too, because it's got the image on top. And I was just thinking of that as a potential writing prompt as well. So maybe, you know, we all have, many of us have, you know, smartphones, and we just take so many photos. And so maybe, pulling out one of those photos and writing about what's in that photo, right? Like reliving that experience, or what do you see? So using photographs or images as a prompt for your writing, what images, what feelings does that evoke for you? I think that can be a really nice writing prompt as well. And then another thing is just using writing prompts. So again, it might be hard to sit down and just say like, what am I writing about? What do I say? And so there are a lot of resources for just different kinds of prompts, depending on what you're kind of interested in. So I have another book. I'll come back to Natalie in a second, but I have a book like this, like 300 writing prompts, which I really like. And it's actually kind of built like a journal. So it's got the prompts and then the empty space. I don't write in this. I use it sometimes for my classes and stuff. I'll use some of these writing prompts. And I have a couple of them at hand that I'll share in just a moment. But a book like this can be helpful. And it's sort of like a journal starter kit, and you just pick your prompts and write about those prompts. But the interwebs is a really great resource for prompts as well. And there are, websites and blogs that are dedicated to journaling that will give you, 75 prompts for self-care and those kinds of things. And so you can scroll through those, or just, every day you assign yourself something. I think WordPress actually had, kind of a 365 days of journaling, or like, blogging, challenge. And so it was like every day you logged in and they gave you a prompt, and I think it's arranged like a PDF, and you can just go to that as well. So there are so many, free accessible resources for folks who are looking for just, I need something to write about, I need something to respond to.
Right. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. That's great. Anyone here who has had some success with some of these? So for example, I've said that the most success I've had historically with journaling has been gratitude journaling, but have other people had success? Woo, my brain is offline this weekend. Have other folks have had success with any of these approaches that Lisha's talking about, or other things as well? So maybe these tricks and tips don't work for you, but you've tried other strategies. What works for you in helping you get started with journaling?
I'll add them to my list.
Really?
For me, it was definitely the gratitude journal, just like one thing a day. Especially with the pandemic and everything, it was really stressful in the beginning. So I started to do something small, like a sentence, like today I'm grateful for this. So that was definitely probably my most consistent journaling experience.
And I think, and Valerie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're like me, and it sounds like you are, part of what makes it work is it doesn't seem like a big ask, right? It's like one sentence or a noun, Yeah,
totally. Like it's not like a big prompt. It's just like a couple sentences, like today I'm feeling grateful for, I don't know, like my health, or, having a roof over my head. Right.
Right. Yeah. Good. Love that.
Having heat and running water these days.
Tell me about it. Man, oh man, oh man. All right. Okay. I cut you off, Lisha. What were you going to say?
Oh, along the lines of the prompts, something else I'm going to plug Natalie Goldberg again. I'm giving you like maybe 5% of what's in this book. So I definitely recommend you getting the book. The other thing in terms of writing prompts is she recommends having a blank page in your journal for ideas. So as you come up with ideas, or you run into experiences throughout the day or something like that, write that down, right? And then that's a prompt for you for later when you want to write about it as well. And I thought that was just like, it's so simple. It's so genius, right? You can generate your own prompts just based on the, you see something amazing or remarkable, you see a squirrel doing something crazy on campus and you want to write a story about it, like whatever, that comes to you, or like, you have this interesting conversation, or you read an interesting book for your class or something like that. So yeah, devote a blank page for your own prompts and for your own ideas, and then come back to them later as it suits you.
I love that. I have to just very quickly, again, talk about my 7-year-old Corbett, but we were at the park a couple of days ago, and because you mentioned squirrels and writing, he started communicating with the squirrel. He said, "Mom, it looked into my eyes and I looked into its eyes, and we just had a moment." And then anyway, But then he came home and he wanted to write about it. And so he wrote a whole book about Jungle Boy, who became friends with a squirrel and fought pollution, is actually how that story turned out. So squirrels can be very inspirational when it comes to writing, I think.
Partially because they're so abundant.
Yes.
Yeah. And what you mentioned too, just being at the park, I think, going for a walk or going to a space, right? So going to a place and bringing a notebook or bringing something to write with, with you to that place, I think can be really useful too. So go for a walk. What are you seeing, hearing, feeling? All those kinds of things can be really useful too.
That's great. Wonderful. All right. What's next? More tips?
Yeah, I want to talk about some more tips. The other thing I haven't talked about is bullet journaling. So I know that's like it's a big thing now. And so I wanted to touch on that too. It's not a practice that I use regularly. But I know that there are a lot of resources around it. And a lot of the folks who work at the Writing Center also use bullet journaling. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And maybe this conversation is a springboard for folks who are interested in exploring it further. Mm-hmm. So if you just Google bullet journaling, you will find a lot of resources about it. But basically a bullet journal is, it's kind of an open structured journal. I made some notes about this here. Hold on. Let me make sure I'm not like misrepresenting this. I see this as like an open structure planner plus journal. And so it usually involves some kind of like a blank notebook. So it's got, grid or whatever, but it's not a pre-printed calendar. And you basically kind of create the calendar as you go. And you create an index page. So every entry gets a page number on it, and then you put it in the index and you can reference it later. So folks use it to do, monthly and weekly planning, but they also do other things like habit trackers and mood trackers and logs. And so they kind of pay attention to goals that they're setting for themselves, like drinking a certain number, glasses of water a day, or exercising, or they track their moods or things like that. And when I talk about journaling, a lot of times with my students, that's what they're kind of thinking about is bullet journaling. So they show me these, and there's a lot of artistic expression in them too. There's a lot of doodling and drawing, and just there's a real design element to it sometimes too. So I wanted to mention that because what I like about it, it's the planner part of it, but you can use those pages to do anything you want. So, maybe you're having an amazing week and inspiration strikes, turn the page, write down what your inspiration is, and then number the page and put it in your index, and then you can reference it later. So I think bullet journaling has been something that a lot of folks have found really meaningful and helpful for them. I'm not sure if folks in this current conversation are feeling that way, but I'd be curious to know, anyone here tried bullet journaling, or are you a bullet journaling convert?
Barbara gave a thumbs up. Sarah, you look like have you tried bullet journaling?
I tried, and I've been looking for ideas on Pinterest, and I'm like, I just don't know where to start, honestly.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Where do I start? Those trackers that you mentioned, Dr. Storey, I've been wanting to do those, but I'm like, what kind of spiral do I use? Because I don't have those dotted spirals.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I've always thought it appeals to several of my sensibilities, but I've tried a couple times, and it's sort of like, I have a similar thing with lip color. I think I just had to let it go. Like, it's not happening. I tried to be a person that bullet journals, and it just didn't work out for me. But I love because I like to be organized. I like to have everything in one place. And I am a fairly creative person. Mm-hmm. It seems like I get started, and then it just feels like overwhelming, as Sarah said. It feels like I don't know if I'm doing this right, and I don't think there's a way to do it wrong, but it feels like there is.
I don't know of the wrong way to do it, except I think the wrong way to do it is to do it in a way that doesn't work for you. So yeah, but it is overwhelming, and the resources that are available are really nice because there's so much out there that's free and accessible, and you can use it, you know, for different layouts and ideas, but also I just get overwhelmed by it, and it's too much. So Leslie, one of the peer writing assistants in the Writing Center, is a big bullet journaler, and she shares a lot of her spreads and things on Instagram. So if you want to look for Label Me Leslie, she's got some great ideas. But I think a good place to start, if you're thinking about like getting into bullet journaling, I would actually not start with the Pinterest side of things. Pinterest is just an avalanche. I would just start with the original bullet journaling website. If you just go to the main, sorry, someone is texting me. I thought I put do not disturb. Go to the main kind of bullet journaling website. I think I actually have it here pulled up, and I'll share it with you, but it just says start here. And it says all you need is pen, paper, and 4 minutes, right? And so it's just bulletjournal.com. They have a really a brief tutorial. They show you how to set it up. And then I think from there, just think about how you might want to use it and what you might want to track or integrate or something like that. I think there's a lot of options there. So I have here some different, you know, images of how people have set up their bullet journals. And I think, again, you can kind of see from some of these examples that really the practice of making the page is also a part of the journaling, right? The analog design of it is a big part of what they're doing. And so I know that they, you know, I've talked with Leslie and other peer writing assistants about it. Like they get a lot of, I think, well-being, I guess I could say, from just putting the thing together and using color and using these different multimodal tools to do this. So that's one option. And then if you use, you know, if you have an iPad or a tablet that has a stylus, there are also templates that you can find for bullet journals, but also for journals that integrate into apps. Like if you use Notability or if you use GoodNotes, there are websites that have like free templates that you can integrate and kind of use it that way if you're more of the digital style of things.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, Leslie pointed those out to me too. So she's very savvy. I thought about having her as like my co-host. So she's a good person to ask about these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the hashtags.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just, anyone else here a bullet journaler? Anyone who's not been overwhelmed by Pinterest? Shannon, you're a bullet journaler?
Well, I have like a different form of bullet journaling. My roommate gave me a planner for my birthday like a year ago, and it actually like it's already pre-made. It doesn't have any of the dates written in or anything like that. So like for someone who's like, I'm not consistently creative, like I don't think I could do like the whole design your own calendar and everything like that. But because it's pre-made, I always find myself like jotting down like how I feel during that week, or if I write something down like if there was a game day or something like that, I would like go back to it and be like, oh, it was really successful, had a lot of fun, you know, like just even small things. And like just thinking about it now, like when I go back and reflect on it, it makes me like, you know, just feel a lot better in terms of like, oh yeah, I remember this happened, that felt good and stuff.
Yeah. It gets back to what Lisha was saying earlier about sometimes you don't want to do it, but you're never sorry that you did. You're always glad that you have that. Yeah. Great. That's a good tip. I think part of it for me too is I like the idea of a physical object, but then the idea of hauling that physical object around with me to my various spaces is hard. And so I end up just falling back on my phone and using that calendar and the apps I have there to kind of keep track of things. So that's part of it too. But it's good to know that there are journaling related apps that I can use. It's cool.
One of them that I know Austin College students have access to is Microsoft OneNote. It's part of the Office suite of apps or software. Everything lives on the cloud now. So that's something that folks can access, and it's not something that's tablet dependent. It's tablet adaptable. So if you have a stylus, you can handwrite on it, but you can also just type into it. It's also great just for class notes and stuff too. It's organized kind of like a binder system. So it's like folders, tabs, pages within those tabs. And that can be a really great way too. Or yeah, if you have like an iPhone or something similar and you have a native app on that, whatever is close to hand can be helpful too. I've been in situations where it's like, I just needed to write something down and I didn't have a pen and paper. I had my phone and I used the app Evernote and I just wrote it in Evernote and I was able to, tag it and find it later. And so I think it's just a matter of trying a few things out, not getting sidetracked with the experimental phase of it, where like just the trying out of things becomes the end, right. But just to think about, give yourself a trial period and see how it works for you and how it's adaptable, and then kind of go from there. But yeah, OneNote and the native notes app, I know a lot of folks use that too, because it's just like, yeah, that's what you have. You can even, speak things aloud. I will say though, there is something about just the tactile experience, for those, if it's accessible to you, of putting a pen or putting a pencil to a paper and like feeling that happen. I don't know. I think that's really meaningful, I think in an embodied level as well. So, the notebook that you carry around, I had an example of one, but they can be real slimline, right? And you just have it with you and just kind of prompt you. But, keep that notebook by your bed or put it next to your coffee maker or your teapot. I know there was a tea tasting people in our neighborhood recently. So, build it into an existing routine, like add that part on where I'm having a cup of coffee or tea or chocolate milk or whatever, and I'm, writing in my journal or something like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You make it seem so easy.
Yeah, I do. And, this is for me too. It is easy. It is.
It is. One of the things I was thinking about earlier is that I think sometimes we get bogged down in, well, I can't journal because I need to buy the perfect journal and I need to have cute pens and stickers and, all of these sorts of things. But, right, I just sat down today. I have a stack of paper that my kids were using to color on. I'm using their big bin of pencils that just lives here on the table. And that's it, right? It was a piece of paper and a pencil. And that's all. That's really all I needed. And I think sometimes we get bogged down in thinking about all the gear that we need to have when the gear that we need is very simple, right? And can be right at hand and doesn't need to be, you don't have to wait until you have the perfect gear to start.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you can use gear to motivate yourself to do it too. So, right. I'm a journal person. You've seen my stack of journals. So there's something about getting that blank notebook, right? It's the fresh pages are all there ready for you to write in. So there's something about that too. And so it's just, if the first, 3 pages are used and then the last like 300 or not, and similarly, you find a nice pen that you like, I've got my kind of setup here. I've got some, I've got fountain pens. Sometimes I like to use fountain pens, but sometimes I also just like the classic, this is the best pen ever, the Muji pen. So a good roller ball, and you have different colors and that can be kind of fun too. And you use the tools sometimes to motivate yourself, but not as an obstacle to getting started. It's low tech. It's as low tech as you need it to be, but it can get as high tech as you want it to be, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. All right. All right. What else do we need to know, Lisha, or what questions do you have for us, or what do you want us to do?
I'm going to talk a little bit more about building kind of tips for building a journaling practice. And then I'm going to give us some prompts so we can practice using a prompt to write, and we'll have another writing session, and then we can have open discussion and all that kind of stuff. So I mentioned just trying to build that habit in small steps. I have a quote here from Daniel Barbizat and Mirabai Bush, who the faculty here did a learning group on contemplative approaches to teaching. And they mentioned journaling and writing in their book. And the quote that I have is, "Be brief, write frequently." So again, it's not something that you need an hour of your time to do, right? Be brief and write frequently, right? Try to do it over a span of, 5 minutes at first and build yourself up into a larger habit. Mm-hmm. Write close to an experience or event. So if you have that notebook or that device kind of close to hand, but build that habit in small steps. And I mean, this is kind of where the the tracker thing of the bullet journal works in, right? Like build it over time, right? Like see how long you can keep the streak going. Build in the reminders in your phone or in your calendar to prompt you to sit down and write for 5 minutes. So, start for 5 minutes, start for 10 minutes. Maybe it's free writing. Maybe it's one of these prompts that we've talked about. Put it in your calendar and just kind of set your clock by it, I guess. And then another way that you can approach a goal is to potentially write a number of words per month if you're using like a digital, tool or something. Natalie Goldberg talks about, my goal is to fill this notebook by the end of the month. The ideal would be to write every day, but my goal is just to fill the notebook. So you can just think about other ways that tracking that progress makes sense for you. Maybe your goal is to buy the fresh notebook and fill it, right? Or get to this point or something like that. But the main thing is not to wait for inspiration, right? You build the desire to do something. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of putting the time into it. And again, making it suit your purposes. It doesn't have to be a certain thing, but maybe the first thing you write about is like, what do I want journaling to do for me? How have I used journaling in the past? How has it been useful for me? What do I need from it? And so you can give yourself that sort of like meta prompt to explore like what you want to do. But I would just say start small and be generous with yourself. Like be very generous with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot. Yeah. And that all seems very doable.
It is. It's really doable. And again, like, we write all the time, and so it's, I think it's just kind of taking a step back from that and saying, I can use this for me too. And this is all stuff that I'm telling myself, even as I'm saying it. So.
The doctor is also the patient. Is that what you're saying?
Always, especially with writing, that is the case. Yes. I'm constantly teaching things and I'm like, I'm telling you this from my own experience. And I'm also telling myself this again, like drafting, revision, making time, being generous with yourself. All these things are things because writing is a lifelong, activity. It's something that we're always learning how to do. And it's something that we're always adapting to suit our purpose and our situation. So yeah, it's something that and it's also hard sometimes, right? It's hard. It's like that muscle. And so it's something that I constantly have to challenge myself to re-engage in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I like all of those tips. Those seem very practical and practicable. I think so. And if you want to use me as your accountability partner, I don't know everyone who's in this session, but if you want to drop me an email in a week and just tell me how your journaling practice has gone, it can be an email that I don't even respond to. If you want to respond, I'll respond. But sometimes it can just be helpful to like have that external check-in, especially early on when you're building a habit. So if you want to share it with me, feel free. I think the folks here know how to reach me. I don't know how like widely distributed this video will be, but yeah, get in touch with me and let me know how your journaling practice is going. And if you have tips that you've discovered through your experience or doing your own research into journaling, I'd be happy to have them and share them with others. Yeah. Well, and if you are watching this video later on YouTube, I'm sure that Lisha 2 years from now would love getting an email from someone saying, I'm a week into journaling practice after watching your video and it's going great. So I would anytime. It's Storey, LSTOREY at austincollege.edu. Yep. You can email me too, but I don't know that you need my validation. She's the one with the PhD in writing. So we're in this situation again, we are all writers, all writers, all journalers. That's true. Do we want to try another writing prompt? Yeah, let's do one more writing prompt. Okay, great. So I'm going to move over to my document here. And these are a few prompts that I've pulled from this 300 writing prompts book, as well as a gratitude prompt. So I will give you your choice. You can choose the prompt that speaks to you. And then I will put on another song and just give us 3 minutes to write about that. So the first prompt is, break up your life up to this point into 3 chapters and give each chapter a title. Mm-hmm. And if that prompts some additional writing about it, that's great. You could write about a recent decision that you've made.
And then who or what are you grateful for this week? So trying a gratitude prompt, if that's new for you or if that's something that you're familiar with and want to get back into the habit of.
Awesome.
So let me start this with some music, or if you're in the Zoom world later on, or the YouTube world, feel free to put on your own song.
Wonderful.
And we're done. You can bring your thought to a close. I won't chop you off just so abruptly. I'll just say that I went with the gratitude prompt. I thought it was a good thing for me right now. And I found that as I was writing about something I was grateful for, just the first thing that came to mind, I generated additional things and people that I was grateful for. It just like reminded me of other things that I hadn't thought about. So I'm grateful for that, I guess, too.
Yeah. How about other folks? Did that, how did that work for you compared to the free writing? Did you like having the additional structure, or did it feel intimidating, or did you have an experience like Lisha had where it just sort of started and rolled from there? Tell us a little bit about your experience. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I kind of did this for our free writing prompt in a way. I actually just became secretary of the Soma Art Club, so I was really grateful for that. And I wrote a little bit about that when we did the free writing. I was just going to add to that for this for this prompt.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Other folks, how about you? How was that, writing with a prompt? Got a lot of introspective folks on the call here. Was it? Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I chose the gratitude prompt because I think it's something I struggle with. Is I know I'm grateful for it, but I never stop and think about it. And so writing about it really would be good for me to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
I was just going to say, even in an academic context, like I know what I want to write about, right? I know that I'm going to write, an English paper about this particular text, and I know what my argument's going to be. And then when I actually sit down to write it, I realize like the limits. I know Erin and I, we've talked about this. Like I realize the limits of what I know, and so it's like, I think these things all the time, right? But it's the process of like making it real and writing and thinking through it that way. Mary, what you're saying really speaks to me because it's like, I think these things, I am thinking about them, but taking that moment to pause and make it real and engage with that,
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, any final thoughts for us here, Lisha, as we wrap things up?
I am just going to encourage you to take this time to do it. I don't know. I joked with you, Erin, earlier, like, the snowstorm kind of canceled our initial one. And I was thinking like, it would have been great to have it beforehand. And then people could use their time in the snowstorm to like write by candlelight or something like that. So I would just say, there's just a lot going on. There's a lot, I mean, even in a non-pandemic year, there's a lot going on. Right. And so, I just would encourage you to, take the time for yourself, start small, do it even when you're not ready to do it. Just invite yourself to try it and build that small habit from small pieces and build it into a larger practice.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and to folks who may be seeing us later on YouTube, thank you also. Oh, Lisha, you're getting lots of hearts and claps and things like that, which is really cool. And of course, thank you to Lisha Daniel Storey for guiding us through our conversation about journaling today, but something that is very simple and that maybe sometimes we just kind of need to get out of our own way, I think, and do something for ourselves that doesn't take much time, doesn't take much gear, but can be really meaningful. So thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you to Lisha.